to identify themselves and state jurisdiction and state the law that gives them authority.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do that?
They said the CFRs contain their authority to regulate my radio station. They said, and the person who said this was Mr. John Glenn, who is a field agent from the Douglas, Arizona office of the Federal Communications Commission. He said, we own the radio airwaves, all of them.
He said, we own? He used those words?
Yes,
we own the radio airwaves?
All of them. And I said, cite the authority for this. He said, it's in the CFRs, and that's as far as he went with it.
Well, Mr. Glenn, I will tell you on the air on this broadcast that you do not own the airwaves. You are a servant of the people who fall under your jurisdiction. And in fact, under the FCC regulations, the ones that we looked at, you don't have the authority to coerce anyone into doing anything. And in this country, you have no right to enter anyone's private premises without a warrant. I mean, that's in the Constitution. You can request, but you don't have a right. And you don't own the airways. You don't own anything except what you paid for with your fraudulent Federal Reserve notes and have at your house. And statements like that by public servants really upset me.
I knew it was important not to let these people into the radio station or into my dwelling, because if I did that, I would have been conferring authority upon them.
That's
to
correct.
regulate my radio station. And this is where most of these, they use the word pirates. If they want to call themselves pirates, let them call themselves pirates. But that's where most of these tinker toy broadcasters screw up, is they invite the FCC in like they think the FCC is really going to be impressed, and they're I don't know what these people are thinking, but they let them in. Maybe it's that knock at the door, and it's the intimidation factor.
Well, it's really the sheeple factor.
The sheeple factor, okay.
Most people in their whole life have never had an original thought. They have never read the law. They don't understand what's going on, and they're intimidated by the slightest show of authority. In fact, these men from the FCC were working under what's called the color of law. And for my listeners, let me explain to you what that means. We all know that a police officer in most cities wears a blue uniform. And on that blue uniform usually has a badge, usually has on the sleeve what police department he belongs to, and maybe some other accoutrements of the trade of being a police officer. And we need police officers, because sometimes people don't do what they're supposed to do and hurt other people. But suppose a man came to your door dressed in a blue shirt and blue pants and told you that you had to come with him because he was a police officer. Now, that's what you call operating under the color of law. The man was not a police officer. He just wore a blue shirt and blue pants, and he told you he was a police officer. That's the color of law. Usually when you see someone wearing a uniform like that, you automatically think police officer. When a man walks up wearing a suit and shows you a badge and says, I'm from the FCC, but shows you no further credentials, doesn't give you the opportunity to check out his credentials, and tries to make you do something which is illegal under the law, which he has no authority to do, that is operating under the color of law. Now, I know that you've been doing some research before you even talked to me, and then after you talked to me, you began looking into the other areas and doing more research. What did you find out about the actual jurisdiction of the FCC in your case?
Well, there are two sections of the Communications Act of 1934, which is found in the United States Code, Chapter 47, I believe. There's two sections in there that are crucial to my argument, and the Commission, as far as I know, has never quoted one of the sections. The other section, they cite it, but they never quote it. And I think it's because if they actually quoted it, any reasonably intelligent person would look at this and just roll over laughing, saying, well, you know, they're blowing smoke. But they are sections 151 and 152. And section 151 defines the powers and the purpose of the Federal Communications Commission, and that is to regulate interstate and foreign radio transmissions.
For the purpose of? Interstate commerce.
Okay, all right. Interstate commerce. I didn't see where you were going. Okay.
And the basically states within the law that they are to regulate common carriers.
Common carriers, right. But The other section that they don't ever quote is Section 152, which I think it's 152B, which very explicitly says that the Federal Communications Commission has no authority at all to regulate wholly intrastate radio communications. In fact, that domain is left to the individual states.
That's correct. The federal government has no jurisdiction whatsoever in the business within a state,
Right.
unless it specifically affects commerce and interstate commerce.
I didn't see where you were going a minute ago, but that's true because it validates my argument even further. And strangely enough, the Commission tries to use the same argument, and I don't see where they're going with it. But there have been court decisions which say that radio broadcast licensing is commerce. So there we immediately have interstate and intrastate commerce, and the only instances when a federal government agency can regulate intrastate commerce is when that intrastate commerce has a significant and adverse impact on interstate commerce. Now, distilling that all down to what it means and how it affects my radio station, if my radio station were affecting any federally licensed broadcast operation, then the Commission would have jurisdiction. But in my case, they can't make that claim because my station interferes with nothing.
Where do you live in the state of Arizona? Where's your studio?
Phoenix, Arizona, North Phoenix.
And what is the broadcast range of your...
Well, I run a half watt into a gain antenna, which gives me 1.5 watts in one direction, and I'm still pushing half watts the other three directions. Gives me a total coverage area 2.5 to 4 miles.
Okay, so 2.5 to 4 miles. How close is the border with another state or country?
140 miles over very mountainous terrain.
Well, I've got to interrupt you at this point, Bill. We're pushing the clock a little bit. We have to take a short break, folks. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this short pause. Welcome back, folks. We continue now with our interview. So, your possible intrusion into another state with your radio broadcast or into another country, which in this case could only be Mexico, is not just improbable, but it's impossible.
Because we're talking about line of sight transmission. We're talking about FM. If it were AM,
then you could skip it.
Then you could skip, or shortwave. That's why the shortwave pirates out there, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
Have absolutely no case at all.
Right.
I'm in the enviable position, I guess, of being geographically situated in an area
Well, you're in the enviable position of being smarter than the rest of them. Because you have a good case here.
Right.
So your broadcast does not go over state lines.
No.
Does not go
doesn't even go over county lines.
Into a foreign country. And in fact, as you said, doesn't even go over county lines.
Doesn't even get out of the city limits.
and sometimes it's doubtful whether it leaves your block. Is that correct?
No, it does leave the block. And I monitor it regularly and I make field measurements. But with the transmitter I have, there's no way. The maximum output power is 1/2 watt. That's less than a third the power of a CD unit.
Okay, so you don't violate that rule. You don't go across state lines. You don't go across international borders.
No, I don't. Oh, another important point is I do not go to any vessels, marine vessels. The last I know, there's no oceans bordering Arizona, and that's an important point because, as far as I can determine from studying case law on this, the state line stops at the water's edge. Because there was a case in Ohio where the commission, or actually the Coast Guard, I guess the commission was working in concert with and monitored an unlicensed station outside the breakwater off the city of Cleveland. And that constituted a transmission to a vessel. And therefore they did violate Section 301.
Well, they probably didn't check their law because every state claims a certain amount of water as their own territorial state water. And then the federal government claims another so many miles of water as the national territorial waters.
Well, I don't cross any state borders. I don't cross any international borders, and I don't, unless they pull a Coast Guard vessel on a trailer up in front of my house, I don't think I'm making it to any vessels.
And if they did, it wouldn't stand up.
No, it would not.
But the other thing is the commerce factor. Do you engage in any commerce?
So the people know exactly what commerce means.
Well, I doubt if anybody out there knows what in the hell we're talking about at all.
Well, it is strictly a non-profit operation funded out of my pocket, which is one of the reasons why it is not on the air now, because concurrent with the little visit by the Federal Communications Commission. I guess I suffered one of the outstanding legacies of the Reagan-Bushnomic economic plan. I lost my job. And when I lost my job, I lost the funding for the radio station.
So it's funded completely out of your
pocket?
pocket?
Yes, completely out of my pocket.
In fact, you're
running a deficit.
But you're running this radio station basically as a hobby and in the best interest of informing the community. There's no commerce involved.
No.
Do you take any commercials?
No.
Do you sell any advertising?
No advertising time, no program time. It's all available.
Do you accept any money from anybody for anything?
No.
Do you pay for the programming that you air?
No, the programming has to come to me free. I will not pay for any programming.
So therefore, you do not come under the definition of commerce whatsoever, much less interstate commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even come under intrastate commerce, do you?
No.
Absolutely not. Therefore, under their own rules, the rules of the FCC and the law, you are not under the jurisdiction of the FCC at all.
Correct.
Now, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners, that I have thoroughly researched this myself, and I am very good at this. And I can tell you without any doubt whatsoever that the FCC in this case is operating under the color of law. They're actually committing a criminal act. They're attempting, by serving a writ of apparent violation upon Mr. Dugan, to extort. Now, that's a crime. That's a felony. They're attempting to extort from him $17,500. He has been convicted of no crime. He has been denied any due process whatsoever. He has been ordered to reply to their notice of apparent violation, which I and others have advised him definitely not to do, because if he replies to their order, he gives them jurisdiction by his own action of replying to their order. In fact, they have no authority to order him to do anything. And in the law that we were just reading a few moments ago, what did it say?
Well, this is very interesting. According to Brandywine Main Line Radio Incorporated versus the Federal Communications Commission in 1972, the Commission can only inform and advise the broadcast licensee as to the law. It cannot coerce a licensee to comply. That's interesting.
In other words, they have no power to enforce.
They have no enforcement
They're solely
power.
a licensing agency, period.
Correct.
And they can only license stations engaged in interstate or intrastate commerce, and only where the intrastate commerce affects interstate commerce.
Correct.
And we're not making this up. We're not reading it out of law books. This is right out of what? What does this come out of?
This came out of, this is Title 47 of the U.S. Code, wire or radio communication.
In other words, what you just read is written in
Section
the
301,
law,
yeah.
Section 301.
Section 301 is the section that the Commission draws that like a gun. They pull that to everybody, but the interesting thing about Section 301 is they draw it, but they never shoot it. They don't let anybody, they never cite it. They never cite the whole section 301. They'll cite one or two lines. It's like taking one or two lines out of the Bible, out of context. You can look at it, it'll say anything you want it to say.
Sure. And they know this. They know what the law says. They know what their limitations are. But most of them, many of these people belong to the secret societies that are subverting the government of the United States, and they are intentionally operating under the color of law to prevent the citizens of this country from broadcasting the truth that could stop them in their tracks. The total object of their operating under color of law to shut down anyone who they have not themselves approved or licensed, as the case may be, is to prevent the broadcasting of the truth, or any information that contradicts, whether it's the truth or not, contradicts what the established power elite want the American people to know. Otherwise, why would a man who's a law-abiding citizen, who works for the FCC, deliberately, with intent, with malice aforethought, break the law to shut down a radio station like yours, which does not in any way come under their jurisdiction or violate the law? These men are criminals, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And what are you doing about this? I mean, they filed a writ of apparent violation.
It's kind of interesting.
Actually, they haven't filed it. They just sent
They
it
sent
to
it to me.
What happens when most people get this writ of apparent violation?
Well, they do exactly what it almost says on the writ itself. Drop the money in the envelope and send it in. And in this case, they don't